I stared at the FedEx envelope that arrived 3 days before Christmas. Inside was an itemized invoice for $8,100, billing me for my brother's educational trip to Europe. Flights, hotels, meals, entertainment, all listed. At the bottom, a handwritten note from my mother. Payment due by January 5th. We know you're good for it. Attached was a second note. A family Christmas dinner invitation, addressed to everyone except me. My brother's girlfriend was invited. Even my parents' neighbor was invited. But not me. I sat in my studio apartment in Portland, the invoice trembling in my hands. The numbers blurred as tears filled my eyes. $8,100. For a trip I didn't take. For a brother who hadn't spoken to me in 6 months except to ask for money. My phone was in my hand before I could think. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and cheerful over a backdrop of laughter and Christmas music. "Hello? Mom, it's me, Katie." "Oh," the brightness dimmed. "You got the invoice? Good. We weren't sure you'd be responsible enough to handle it promptly." Responsible enough. The words stung like a slap. "Mom, what is this? Why am I being billed for Trevor's trip?" "Well, honey, you know how expensive everything is these days. Your father and I just couldn't swing it on our own. And Trevor really needed this experience for his personal growth. You're doing well for yourself. We thought you'd want to help, but I wasn't asked. And Mom, about Christmas dinner, I saw the invitation list." A pause. Then, carefully, "Well, honey, it's just for close family this year. You understand. I am close family. I'm your daughter. You know what I mean. People who contribute to the family. People who are there for us." My breath caught. People who contribute. As if I hadn't been contributing for years. I thought back to every birthday where Trevor got the spotlight, and I got a card. Every Christmas, where his pile of gifts towered over my single present. I remembered being 18, working at a grocery store after school, saving for college while Trevor got handed the keys to a new Honda Civic for his 16th birthday. I got a used bicycle because, as Dad said, I needed the exercise anyway. Trevor's college was paid in full. Mine? I worked 3 jobs and graduated with $60,000 in student loans that I'm still paying off at 32 years old. Trevor got a down payment for his first apartment. I slept on a friend's couch for 6 months after graduation. "Mom, I need to go. Don't forget about the invoice, Katie. We're counting on you." She hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, at the invoice, at the invitation that didn't include my name. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger exactly, it was clarity. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank accounts. The joint checking account I'd opened with my parents 6 years ago for temporary access, they'd said, showed a balance of $43. My account, they'd drained it. I checked the credit card I'd given them for emergencies 7 years ago. $14,000 charged. None of it emergencies. My hands moved with purpose now. I canceled the credit card. The automated system asked if I was sure. Yes. I closed the joint account and transferred the remaining $43 to my personal checking. I opened my Venmo app. Request after request from Trevor. Rent help. Car repair. Just because, I scrolled back. 3 years of requests. $12,000 total. I'd sent every penny. I blocked him. Then, I found an envelope in my desk drawer. I placed a crisp $1 bill inside. I took a note card, the kind with small blue flowers on the border, and wrote in my neatest handwriting, "Payment for brother's trip. Santa skipped me too, so this is all I've got. Consider us even for the last decade. Merry Christmas." I printed their invoice, took a red stamp pad from my craft supplies, and stamped across it, "Account closed." I sealed everything in the envelope, addressed it, and drove to the post office. Overnight delivery. They'd get it Christmas Eve morning. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. That lasted exactly 2 hours. My doorbell rang at 9 p.m., then it pounded. I looked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. My parents and Trevor stood outside. My father was holding what looked like bank statements. They were shouting my name. My mother was crying. But even through the peephole I could see her eyes were cold and calculating. My father's face was red with rage. The pounding got louder. My doorknob rattled. "Katie, Open this door right now. I stepped back, my heart hammering. This was it. The moment everything changed. I opened the door because the pounding was going to wake my neighbors, and I didn't need that kind of attention. My father pushed past me before I could say a word. What the hell did you do? He was waving bank statements in my face, close enough that the papers brushed my nose. My mother followed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, but those eyes were granite. How could you do this to us? Trevor slouched in last, smirking, his phone already out and recording. Of course he was recording. Your accounts? I stepped back, trying to create space. Those were my accounts you had access to. Don't be selfish. My mother's voice had that edge I remembered from childhood, the one that made me feel small. Family shares resources. We raised you, we fed you, we clothed you. I've paid you back 20 times over. My voice was shaking but steady. I've given you thousands of dollars. For 5 years, I've sent you $300 a month. That's $18,000. I bought you a refrigerator. I paid for Mom's dental work. I've been your ATM while you treated me like I don't exist. Trevor finally spoke, his voice lazy and amused. Yeah, and we needed it. You make good money. We don't have what you have. I make $58,000 a year as a dental hygienist. I have $60,000 in student loans. I live in a 400 square foot studio apartment. What exactly do you think I have? The three of them looked at each other. My father's rage flickered with something else. Confusion. You told us she makes over $100 grand, Trevor said to our parents. My mother waved her hand dismissively. She does well enough. You lied to him. The realization hit me like cold water. You've been lying to him about me. We didn't lie, my father said. We just didn't see the need to get into specifics. Specifics! I laughed, sharp and bitter. You told him I was wealthy so he'd feel entitled to my money. You made me the villain for not giving more. This is ridiculous. My father threw the bank statements on my small dining table. You closed our accounts. You canceled our cards. How are we supposed to live? Get jobs? The words came out before I could stop them. Dad, you're 61. Mom, you're 59. You're not retired. You work part-time at the community center. Mom works at the boutique. You have income. Not enough, my mother said. Not with the lifestyle we've built. The lifestyle I funded, you mean? I walked to the table and picked up the bank statements. They were from the joint account, the one they'd drained. I flipped through them, my hands starting to shake for a different reason. Car payment. $457 a month. To a dealership. For a car I'd never seen. Insurance payment. $322 a month. For a policy I'd never opened. Rent payment. $1,900 a month. To an address I'd never lived at. What is this? I looked up at them. What car? What insurance? What apartment? The room went very quiet. Trevor's smirk faded slightly. My mother and father exchanged a look. Trevor needed a good start, my mother said finally. He needed a reliable car. You bought him a car with my money? We financed it, my father corrected. In your name. Your credit was better. The floor seemed to tilt. You financed a car in my name, without telling me. And the apartment, Trevor added. And there was pride in his voice. 2-bedroom in the Pearl District. Real nice place. The lease is in my name. It wasn't a question. I already knew. You have good credit, my mother said, as if this explained everything. Or you did. Trevor was just starting out. Landlords wanted someone established. We helped him by using your information. We thought you'd understand. Family helps family. That's fraud. The word came out as a whisper. That's identity theft. Don't be dramatic, my father said. You willingly gave us access to your accounts. You gave us your information. We're your parents. We were helping your brother. I gave you emergency access. For emergencies. Not to open credit lines and sign leases in my name. Semantics, my mother said. My phone was in my hand. I was dialing before I could think about it. Who are you calling? My father demanded. Alavir. He laughed. Actually laughed. Good luck. You gave us access to your accounts willingly. You can't prove you didn't authorize anything. We're your parents. No one will believe you'd let us commit fraud. Any judge will see a daughter having regrets about helping her family. Get out. Katie, don't be hasty. My mother stepped toward me. We can work this out. Family works things out. Get out of my apartment. Trevor turned at the door, his phone still recording, and the smirk was back full force. Thanks for the car, sis. It drives real smooth. Leather seats and everything. The door slammed. I stood in my apartment, surrounded by the silence they left behind, and opened my credit report with shaking hands. My score had dropped from 740 to 590. There were 6 credit cards I'd never opened, $38,000 in debt I'd never incurred. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my phone still in my hand, and tried to remember how to breathe. I called out sick the next morning. I'd been up all night, my eyes gritty and red, going through every document I could find. By 6 a.m., I was on hold with the first credit bureau. By 7 a.m., I was on hold with the second. By 8, the third. Every representative said the same thing in slightly different words. The charges appear legitimate. There's a signature. There's a social security number. We'll need you to file a police report for fraud. Police report. That meant accusing my parents. My brother. It meant making it official. Making it criminal. I sat at my tiny kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands, staring at the police department's website pulled up on my laptop. The fraud report form waited for me to fill it out. They're my family, a voice in my head whispered. They raised me, fed me, kept a roof over my head. They stole from you, another voice answered. Stronger. They used you. They ruined your credit. They never saw you as a daughter, only as a resource. I filled out the form. My hands shook so badly I had to retype my address 3 times. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Officer Martinez at the police station. He was in his 40s, with kind eyes and a wedding ring worn smooth from years of wear. This is a difficult situation, he said after I'd explained everything. Family fraud cases are hard to prove and even harder to prosecute. The best thing you can do is document everything. Bank statements, credit reports, any communication you have with them. Anything that shows you didn't authorize these charges. Will they be arrested? That depends on the evidence and whether the DA thinks there's a strong enough case. I'll be honest with you, Miss Patterson. When family members have legitimate access to accounts, even temporarily, it creates a gray area. But identity theft is identity theft. We'll investigate. I left the station feeling hollowed out. I'd done it. I'd reported my own parents to the police. My phone rang as I was getting into my car. My boss, Dr. Chen. Katie, I need you to come in. We need to talk. The drive to the dental practice took 15 minutes. It felt like 15 hours. Dr. Chen met me in his office, his face serious. Katie, you know we do routine background and credit checks every 5 years for all staff members? My stomach dropped. Yes, yours was flagged. Multiple accounts and collections. Your credit score has dropped significantly. Katie, you handle patient billing. You process payments. Our insurance requires all staff to maintain certain financial standards. This is a liability. Dr. Chen, I'm a victim of identity theft. My family, I understand this is a difficult situation. He held up his hand. But I have to follow protocol. I'm putting you on probation. You have 90 days to resolve this, or I'll have to let you go. I'm sorry. 90 days. 3 months. To fix what had taken years to destroy. I made it to my car before I started crying. That afternoon, I got the notice from my landlord. The building was being sold. Everyone had to be out in 60 days. I needed a new apartment. I spent the next 3 days applying to every rental I could find in my price range. 12 applications. 12 background checks, 12 credit pulls, 12 rejections. I'm sorry, but your credit score doesn't meet our requirements. We've decided to go with another applicant. Your debt-to-income ratio is outside our acceptable range. I was going to be homeless, 32 years old with a college degree and a professional job, and I was going to be homeless because my family destroyed my credit. I called my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. We'd always been close when I was younger. She'd taken me to my first concert, taught me how to drive, sent me care packages in college. Aunt Linda, I need to tell you what's happening. I explained everything. The invoice, the accounts, the fraud, the police report. She listened quietly. Oh, Katie, she said when I finished. and my heart lifted at the sympathy in her voice. Your mother called me this morning. My heart sank again. She said you're having a mental breakdown, that you're making wild accusations because you're stressed about work. She said you've always had issues with jealousy about Trevor, and now it's gotten out of hand. She's really worried about you, sweetie. Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist, maybe? Aunt Linda, I have bank statements. I have credit reports. I have proof. Honey, your mom said you'd say that. She said you've been having trouble distinguishing between what's real and what you've imagined. She's concerned you might be having some kind of episode. They'd gotten to her first. They'd controlled the narrative. Made me the unstable one, the unreliable narrator of my own life. I have to go, I said. Katie, please get help. We all love you. I hung up and sat in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store, watching people come and go with their carts full of normal life, and wondered how everything had fallen apart so completely. The letter came the next day. Thick cream-colored paper, expensive. The law offices of Morrison and Associates. My parents were suing me for defamation and emotional distress. The lawsuit claimed I was spreading malicious lies about them to damage their reputation in the community. They were demanding $50,000 in damages. Attached was an affidavit from Trevor, notarized and official, swearing that I had voluntarily given him access to my credit, and was now regretting it and blaming them because I was in financial trouble from my own poor choices. That evening, I drove past my parents' house. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it with my own eyes. There was a sold sign on the lawn, and in the driveway, gleaming under the streetlights, was a new BMW with dealer plates still in the window. They'd just bought Trevor a $35,000 car. With what money? I thought. Then I realized, with my money, with my credit, with my future they'd stolen. I drove back to my studio apartment and started packing. I had 2 weeks to find somewhere to live, 90 days to save my job, and no idea how I was going to survive any of it. The room was in a house 40 minutes from work. I'd answered an ad on Craigslist, met the landlord who didn't run a credit check because he just needed someone fast, and moved in with 2 suitcases and a box of kitchen supplies. I was sharing a bathroom with 3 strangers. My room was barely big enough for a twin mattress on the floor and a small dresser. There was no closet. I hung my work clothes on hooks screwed into the wall. I was 32 years old, and this was my life now. Work became its own kind of torture. Dr. Chen watched everything I did. If I was 2 minutes late from lunch, he noticed. If I took an extra moment with a patient, he made a note. The other hygienists whispered when I walked by. Someone started a rumor I was embezzling. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my career. The staff Christmas party was being planned. I saw the group text. I wasn't included in it. I ate lunch alone in my car, spending the time on the phone with credit card companies, trying to explain that no, I didn't open that account. No, I didn't make those charges. My cousin Becca sent me a text the week before Christmas. After discussion with the family, we've decided it's best if you don't attend my wedding. We don't want drama or legal issues affecting the celebration. Hope you understand. I was uninvited from her March wedding, then from my uncle's retirement party in January, then from Sunday dinners at my grandmother's house. I checked Facebook and found I'd been removed from the family group. The Patterson Family Updates page that had chronicled birthdays and holidays and achievements for the last 8 years no longer included me. My grandmother called, crying. She was 92, her voice thin and wavering. Katie, why would you hurt your parents like this? After everything they did for you, I never thought you'd be so cruel. Grandma, they stole from me. That's not what they told me. They said you're having problems, and you're lashing out. They're so worried about you. We all are. Grandma, I think you need to apologize and ask for their forgiveness before it's too late, before you lose your family forever. She hung up before I could respond. Trevor's social media became a campaign against me without ever mentioning my name. He posted about toxic siblings who can't handle other people's success, about family members who make false accusations for attention, about standing strong against people who try to tear you down. His friends commented with hearts and fire emojis. Mutual acquaintances saw it. My phone buzzed with texts. Is this about you? What's going on? I heard something happened with your family. I couldn't defend myself without looking worse. Anything I said would sound like the exact kind of drama and attention-seeking Trevor was describing. I spent $300 I didn't have on a consultation with a lawyer who specialized in fraud cases. Her office was small but neat, and she listened to my story with a neutral expression that gradually shifted to something like sympathy. "I'll be honest with you," she said when I finished. "This will be expensive. We're talking years of litigation, tens of thousands in legal fees. And because they're family, and because you did initially give them account access for what seemed like legitimate reasons, it creates ambiguity. We'd need to prove intent to defraud, prove you didn't authorize each specific charge. Your parents will claim you knew and approved everything verbally. It becomes your word against theirs. So I can't win?" I didn't say that. But the retainer alone would be $5,000. And there's no guarantee of success. I didn't have $5,000. I barely had $500. I stopped sleeping. When I closed my eyes, I saw my credit report, those red numbers marching down the page. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks because food tasted like ashes. A stress rash appeared on my neck and wouldn't go away. I missed work because I was having panic attacks in my car before my shift. Dr. Chen called me into his office and handed me a written warning. "If your attendance doesn't improve, Katie, I'll have no choice but to terminate you, regardless of the probation period." I came home to my rented room one evening to find an eviction notice taped to my door. My hands shook as I read it. My parents had found out where I was living. They'd contacted my landlord. They'd told him I was dangerous and unstable. They'd provided proof. The police report I'd filed against them, reframed as evidence of my false accusations and mental instability. The landlord didn't want trouble. He wanted me out in 2 weeks. I sat on my mattress on the floor, surrounded by the few belongings I had left, and pulled up my email. There was a notification from the county court. Trevor had filed a restraining order against me. He claimed I was harassing and threatening him. The court date was in 5 days. If the restraining order was granted, I'd be barred from going near my parents' neighborhood, which included the area where my dentist office was located, which meant I'd have to quit my job. Everything they'd built their lives on, they'd taken from me. And now, they were taking the rest. I lay down on my mattress and stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the streetlight outside shift across the water stain above my head, and I finally let myself break completely. I had nothing left to lose. I slept in my car that night, and the next night, and the night after that. The eviction was immediate, and I had nowhere to go. I showed up at work early, showered at the gym down the street, and brushed my teeth in the office bathroom before anyone arrived. Dr. Chen hadn't fired me yet, but I could see it coming. I was one more missed shift, one more credit card declined, one more problem away from unemployment. The restraining order hearing was tomorrow. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I'd represent myself and probably lose. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot at 6 in the morning, trying to decide if I had enough money for coffee or if I needed to save it for gas, when someone knocked on my window. I jumped, my heart slamming against my ribs. A woman stood outside, early 50s, professional clothes, concerned expression. I recognized her. Diane Morrison. She came in every 3 months for cleanings, always brought homemade cookies for the staff, always asked about my life like she actually cared about the answer. I rolled down the window. "Katie, are you sleeping in your car?" There was no point in lying. "Yes." "Come on. There's a coffee shop across the street. Let me buy you breakfast." I should have said no. I should have been embarrassed. But I was so tired, and she was being kind, and kindness was in short supply these days. Over coffee and a breakfast sandwich I tried not to devour too quickly. I told her everything. The invoice, the fraud, the lawsuit, the restraining order, the eviction. All of it spilled out in a rush of words I couldn't stop. Diane listened without interrupting. When I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a long moment. "I think I can help," she said. "And you need to know something. Your parents did this to someone else." I stared at her. "What?" 15 years ago, my cousin was married to a man whose parents did exactly this to his sister. Used her credit, destroyed her financially, turned the family against her. That sister eventually took her own life. The family was never prosecuted. I've been watching for patterns since then. When I heard your name in the family defamation context from courthouse records, which are public, I did some research. Katie, your parents have a history. A history? 3 families in your parents' social circle have had similar financial irregularities. Nothing proven, but patterns. I'm a paralegal. I know how to look for these things. Why are you helping me? Because no one helped my cousin's sister-in-law. And because you deserve better than this. She pulled out her phone. I know a lawyer, Angela Price. She takes cases pro bono for fraud victims when the evidence is strong. Let me call her. 3 hours later, I was sitting in Angela Price's office. She was in her 50s, sharp eyes, expensive suit, and a reputation for being ruthless in court. She reviewed every document I'd brought: bank statements, credit reports, police reports, the lawsuit, the restraining order petition. She made notes, asked questions, and didn't show much emotion. Finally, she looked up. This is prosecutable. And you have more evidence than most victims ever get. But we need to move fast. They're trying to bury you in legal action so you can't fight back. Classic abuser tactic. Can you help me? The restraining order hearing is tomorrow. I'll represent you. No charge. After that, we'll talk about the bigger case. She smiled. And it wasn't friendly. It was predatory. Katie, I'm going to enjoy this. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with Angela beside me. My parents and Trevor were already there with their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked bored. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. I didn't look at them. I couldn't. The judge called the case. Trevor's lawyer stood and painted me as an unstable woman who'd been harassing his client for months. He had screenshots of texts I'd supposedly sent. Except, I hadn't sent them. He had reports of me driving past their house. I'd done that once, the night I saw the BMW. He had statements from neighbors who'd supposedly seen me lurking. I'd never been to their neighborhood except that one time. It was all lies. But it sounded convincing. Then Angela stood. She presented phone records showing I'd had 0 contact with Trevor for months. No calls, no texts, no emails. She presented my work schedule, showing I was at the dental office during the times I'd supposedly been harassing him. She presented bank records showing I was working overtime to survive, with no time or resources to stalk anyone. And then she played her ace. Text messages from Trevor to his friends, obtained through legal discovery, where he bragged about shutting his sister up with legal stuff and how easy it was to manipulate the system. The judge's expression went from neutral to disgusted. He looked at Trevor, at his lawyer, at my parents sitting behind them. Petition denied. And Mr. Patterson, if I see you in my courtroom again wasting the court's time with false allegations, I'll hold you in contempt. I walked out of the courthouse, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe. Angela walked me to my car, which she'd tactfully not mentioned I was living in. I filed fraud charges in a civil suit this afternoon, she said. But Katie, you need to prepare. Your parents filed for bankruptcy this morning, claiming they're being financially persecuted by you. They're trying to protect their assets before we can recover anything. Of course they were. And there's something else. Your brother applied for 3 more credit cards in your name yesterday. He's escalating because he knows he's about to be caught. He's trying to grab as much as he can before everything crashes down. My phone buzzed with an alert. A new credit inquiry. For a $40,000 personal loan. In my name? While I'd been in court, they weren't slowing down. They were speeding up. And I was drowning in debt that would take decades to clear. What do I do? We fight, Angela said. And we win. My parents went scorched earth. The Facebook post went up the next day. A long, emotional message from my mother about their ungrateful daughter who was suing them for loving their son. About how they'd given me everything, sacrificed so much, and this was how I repaid them. About how money had poisoned my heart and turned me against my own family. The post was shared 400 times in 2 days. It reached people from my high school, my old jobs, my church I hadn't attended in 5 years. The comments were brutal. What kind of daughter sues her own parents? Money ruins families. So sad. She should be ashamed of herself. My childhood friends saw it. People I'd grown up with. People who'd been at my birthday parties and sleepovers. All believed my mother's version of the story. Trevor posted a video. He was sitting in his apartment, the one leased in my name, looking sad and vulnerable. He talked about family bonds and forgiveness. He said I was trying to destroy their lives because I couldn't accept that he was successful, he cried. Actual tears. The video got 3,000 views. The comments called me a monster, a jealous sister, a disgrace. I wanted to respond. I wanted to post my bank statements, my credit reports, my proof, but Angela stopped me. Let them dig their hole deeper. Every public statement they make is evidence. My phone rang. Dr. Chen. My stomach dropped. Katie, I need you to come in. His office felt like a courtroom. He sat behind his desk, his expression regretful. We've lost 6 patients this week. All of them specifically requested not to be scheduled with you. The social media attention is affecting the practice. I'm sorry, Katie, but I have to let you go. I'll give you 2 weeks severance. That's the best I can do. I was officially unemployed. Angela filed emergency motions to freeze my parents' assets. They countered with motions claiming elder abuse. They were 59 and 61, hardly elderly. But they got a sympathetic judge who granted a temporary delay on asset freezing pending further investigation into the family dynamics. Meanwhile, my debt continued climbing. Trevor had opened 4 new accounts. The total fraudulent debt was now $53,000. And it was all in my name, destroying my credit more every day. A local news reporter named Marcus Webb reached out. He'd seen the social media posts and wanted to hear both sides. I was hesitant, but Angela said, "Control your narrative, or they'll control it for you." I agreed to an interview. I sat in my car, which was serving as my home, and told Marcus everything. I showed him documents, bank statements, credit reports, police reports, the fraud charges. I explained calmly, factually, how my family had systematically stolen my identity and destroyed my financial life. Marcus investigated independently. He called banks, talked to credit experts, reviewed public records. He called my parents for comment. They declined, but issued a statement through their lawyer about their troubled daughter who was making false allegations. The segment aired on the evening news. 6 minutes of my story, complete with screenshots of documents, expert commentary on identity theft, and a sober conclusion about how family fraud often goes unprosecuted. The response was immediate. The comments on the news station's website shifted. People started questioning my parents' version of events. Other victims reached out, saying they'd experienced similar things with their families. 3 people contacted Angela claiming my parents or people in their social circle had approached them with suspicious investment opportunities that seemed like scams. Public opinion started turning. My phone rang at 11 that night. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Katie, my mother's voice, thick with tears. Please drop the charges. We'll pay you back. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just wanted to help Trevor. Please. You're ruining our lives. People are looking at us differently. Your father can't show his face at the Rotary Club. I had to quit my book club. Please. No. Katie, please. We're your parents. You were my parents. You stopped being my parents the moment you decided I only existed to fund Trevor's life. You saw me as a wallet, not a daughter. If you do this, you'll never be our daughter again. I haven't been your daughter in a long time. I just didn't realize it until you sent me that invoice. She hung up. I sat in my car, in a Walmart parking lot, and cried. Not because I regretted what I'd said, but because it was true, and the truth hurt worse than any of their lies. The next morning my phone rang again. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. You think you're so smart? Trevor's voice slurred and angry. Drunk. You think you're going to win? You're going to lose everything. Dad has a lawyer who's going to prove you're lying. We have evidence you authorized everything. We recorded you. We've been documenting for years just in case you ever turned on us. You're done. Ice slid down my spine. Recorded conversations. Taken out of context. Manipulated. Angela had warned me that family fraud cases often came down to she said. If they had recordings of me saying I'd help them financially, even innocently, they could twist it to look like authorization. He hung up. I immediately called Angela. It went to voicemail. It was midnight. The hearing was at 9 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I sat in my car, watching the Walmart parking lot empty and fill and empty again, as the night shift came and went. I watched the sun rise over the store's roof, painting the sky pink and gold, and wondered if I was about to lose everything I'd fought for. At 7, I drove to Angela's office and waited in the parking lot. She arrived at 8, saw me, and came over immediately. Trevor called me last night. He said they have recordings of me agreeing to help them financially. He said they've been documenting for years. Angela's expression didn't change. Get in. We need to talk before court. The courtroom was packed. My parents looked confident. Trevor looked smug. Their lawyer had a briefcase that looked heavy with evidence. Angela leaned over and whispered, "Trust me. I got your message last night. I made calls. We're good." I wanted to believe her, but my hands were shaking. The judge called the case. The Honorable Sandra Martinez presiding. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back severely, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked at both sides with equal assessment. My parents' lawyer stood. His name was Richard Bloom, and he had a reputation for winning impossible cases. He was expensive. How they were affording him, I didn't want to know. Probably with my money. He presented their evidence methodically. Emails where I'd said things like, "Of course I can help," in response to questions that, out of context, looked like financial agreements. Text messages where I'd said, "Sure, whatever you need about picking up groceries," that could be interpreted as blanket authorization. And then, the recording. My voice came through the courtroom speakers, clear and concerned. "I'll help however I can. Family takes care of family." My heart sank. I remembered that conversation. 3 years ago, my mother had called, crying, saying she couldn't afford her heart medication. I'd sent $300 immediately. But here, in this courtroom, with no context, it sounded like I was agreeing to provide ongoing financial support. Bloom smiled. "As you can see, Your Honor, Miss Patterson repeatedly and willingly offered to help her family financially. She gave them access to her accounts. She authorized their use of her credit. She's now experiencing financial difficulties due to her own poor choices, and is attempting to blame her family for her situation. This is a clear case of a daughter who regrets being generous and is now crying fraud." I felt sick. It sounded convincing. It sounded true. Even I could see how a judge might believe it. Angela stood. She looked calm, almost relaxed. "Your Honor, I'd like to present the full context of that recording, which was obtained illegally without my client's knowledge, violating Oregon's wiretapping laws, which require two-party consent for recordings." Bloom started to object, but Angela held up her hand. "Additionally, I have the complete, unedited version of that recording." She played it. My voice again. "I'll help however I can. Family takes care of family. How much do you need?" My mother's voice. "Just $300 this month, honey. For my heart medication. We'll pay you back." My voice. "You don't have to pay me back. I want you to be healthy." Then, and this was the part that made the courtroom go silent, my mother's voice again, muffled, speaking to someone else in the room. "See? Easy. She falls for it every time. We can get at least $500 a month from her. Maybe more if we play it right." Trevor's voice in the background. "She's such a sucker." Laughter. The courtroom was absolutely silent. My parents' faces had gone white. Trevor looked like he might be sick. Bloom was very carefully not looking at his clients. "Where did you get that?" Bloom demanded. "Discovery," Angela said smoothly. "When Mr. Patterson claimed they had recordings documenting Miss Patterson's willing participation, I subpoenaed all recordings, including the ones they didn't want us to hear. Turns out, they recorded quite a lot of their conversations, including ones discussing how to manipulate Katie into giving them more money." She wasn't done. Angela presented forensic handwriting analysis showing the signatures on lease agreements and loan applications didn't match Katie's signature on file with her bank and employer. She presented IP address logs showing every fraudulent application originated from my parents' home address, traceable through their internet provider. She presented bank security footage, obtained through subpoena, showing my mother depositing checks made out to me into accounts I'd never accessed. She presented testimony, via video deposition from a bank employee who remembered my mother specifically because she'd claimed to be me when opening one of the fraudulent accounts, and the employee had thought it odd but hadn't pushed the issue. She presented phone records showing Trevor had called credit card companies 17 times over 2 years, and the credit company's security recordings captured him impersonating me, his voice, using my information, opening accounts. And finally, she presented Trevor's social media. Not the public posts about toxic siblings, the private ones. Messages to friends where he'd bragged about using my credit score to fund his lifestyle. Screenshots where he'd said, "My parents showed me how to access her accounts without her knowing. It's so easy." Judge Martinez removed her glasses and looked at my parents and brother for a long moment. "I've been on the bench for 22 years, she said quietly. "I've seen a lot of family disputes, financial disagreements. But this?" She shook her head. "This is systematic fraud. This is premeditated identity theft. This is a family who saw their daughter and sister not as a person but as a resource to be exploited." She looked at me. "Miss Patterson, I'm sorry for what you've endured." Then she looked at my parents. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." The ruling was comprehensive. Guilty on all counts of identity theft, fraud, and forgery. Criminal charges would proceed through the DA's office. Civil judgment in my favor. $89,000, covering all fraudulent debt, my legal fees, damages for emotional distress, and funds to repair my credit. All fraudulent accounts were to be immediately closed and removed from my credit report. The restraining order was flipped. My parents and Trevor were ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times. Additionally, Judge Martinez ordered my parents to undergo financial counseling and place them on 3 years of probation. Trevor faced potential jail time, suspended with strict probation conditions. They were ordered to publicly retract their defamation on social media, with a formal apology dictated by the court. "And if I see any of you in my courtroom again," Judge Martinez said, "I will not be lenient." The aftermath moved quickly. Over the next weeks and months, pieces of my life started coming back together. My credit was restored. The fraudulent accounts disappeared from my report like they'd never existed. My score climbed back to 735. I got a job at a different dental practice, a better one, with a boss who'd seen the news story and admired my strength. Dr. Sarah Brennan told me during my interview, "Anyone who fights that hard for themselves is someone I want on my team." I found an apartment, a real one, 1 bedroom, with a full kitchen and a bathroom I didn't have to share. It had a window that got morning sun, and I put a plant on the sill and watched it grow. I started therapy, twice a week at first, then once. I worked through the abuse, the gaslighting, the years of being made invisible. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to my usefulness. I learned to set boundaries. I learned to say no without guilt. The community that had turned against me slowly, quietly, started reaching out. Not everyone. Some people still believed my parents, but enough people saw the truth. Enough people apologized. Diane became one of my closest friends. We had coffee every Sunday morning, and she never made me feel like I owed her for helping me. Angela stayed in touch too, checking in every few months, sending articles about fraud prevention, reminding me I was stronger than I knew. I joined a support group for fraud victims. I shared my story and helped others navigate their own battles. I learned I wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. My parents and Trevor made the court-ordered public apologies on social media. They were brief and clearly written by lawyers, with no real remorse. I didn't care. I didn't need their apology. I needed them out of my life, and that's what I got. The extended family remained fractured. Some reached out to apologize. My Aunt Linda called, crying, saying she should have believed me. Some cousins reconnected, admitting they'd felt pressured to take sides. My grandmother never apologized, but she sent a Christmas card that year, with a check inside. Not for the money my parents had stolen, but for the years she hadn't listened. The note inside said simply, "I'm sorry I didn't hear you. You deserved better. You still do." I framed the note, not the check, which I donated to a fraud victims fund, but the note. Because being seen, being heard, being believed, that was worth more than any amount of money. I spent Thanksgiving with Diane's family, Christmas with Angela and her wife, New Year's with my support group. I learned what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation, not transaction, but choice. People who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I still think about that invoice sometimes. $8,100 for a trip I didn't take, sent by parents who didn't invite me to Christmas dinner. It was the catalyst. The moment I finally saw the truth I'd been avoiding for 32 years. I wasn't invisible because I wasn't enough. I was invisible because they chose not to see me. But I saw myself, and that made all the difference. I learned that blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Respect does. Love does. Real love. The kind that doesn't come with invoices and conditions. I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. It's self-preservation. It's the difference between surviving and actually living. I learned that sometimes the hardest thing to do is walk away from people who are supposed to love you. But sometimes it's also the most important thing. I learned that I didn't need my parents to acknowledge my worth. I didn't need Trevor to see me as more than an ATM. I didn't need my extended family's approval. I just needed to see my own value. And once I did, everything else fell into place. Katie Patterson still exists, but now, she exists for herself, not as a wallet, not as a resource, not as the invisible daughter waiting for crumbs of attention, just as Katie, as herself, as enough, and that, I learned, was always more than enough. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever been valued more for what you could give than who you are? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. You're not alone in this, and sometimes sharing our experiences helps us heal. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming, about fighting back, about finding yourself when the people who should have loved you tried to make you disappear. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's struggling with family dynamics, someone who needs to know it's okay to set boundaries, someone who needs to remember their worth. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you remember that you exist. You matter. You're enough, exactly as you are. Take care of yourselves. And remember, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to see you when others look away. Until next time.